Argentina launched a meme coin through their president Javier Milei, or at least that's what people thought. Now there are currently accusations of scams, insider trading, and the president of Argentina may be charged with fraud and faces possible impeachment. I'm here to break down what happened because I got insider access to the real story. I even got offered control of the missing $100 million plus that was made in ill-gotten gains. Welcome back to the $10 million studio. Our story starts on February 14th, 2025. Javier Milei, the president of Argentina, tweeted about a meme coin called Libra. The details at first were sparse. Quote, liberal Argentina grows. This private project will focus on encouraging growth of the Argentine economy, funding small businesses and Argentine adventures. The world wants to invest in Argentina. And it linked to a website which called it a token with purpose, where 50% of the tokens were allocated to Argentina growth. And I'll admit, it sounds nice. However, as the price skyrocketed to billions of dollars in market cap, people got worried because there appeared to be insider trading. And that's when Javier Milei suddenly deleted his tweet, saying he, quote, obviously has no connection with the project, and, quote, I was not aware of the details of the project. Understandably, the price crashed after this, but in the rubble, people discovered that the team responsible for launching the token may have walked away with over $100 million being taken out of the liquidity pool, meaning they may have gotten rich while everyone else got rugged. It was about this time I began to investigate, and I got an anonymous phone call from someone who claimed to know where this all started, Tech Forum Argentina, which was an event where you could pay as a blockchain company to be a sponsor. According to a source who was there and paid for it, part of it included a meet and greet with Javier Milei, the president of Argentina. This person was excited, but disappointed to find out that once they got there, they were invited to sign an even more expensive contract where two of the guys who ran the event, Mauricio Novelli and Manuel Godoy, were going to basically advise you on how to have blockchain technology in Argentina. Basically, they got you access to Milei. The person I spoke to did not pay for it. Someone who did was Kip Protocol. And the strategic partner of Tech Forum in 2025 is Kelsier. Both of those companies are going to be extremely important. And the people who run them are called Julian Pei and Hayden Davis. Pretty soon, a plan was hatched between Mauricio, Manuel from Tech Forum Argentina, and Julian and Hayden to launch a project together. It was going to be called Libra and support the Argentinian economy. And President Milei agreed to tweet about it. The division of labor was basically that Mauricio and Manuel were the connection, it seems, Hayden was handling the launch of the token, and Julian was going to set up a company to distribute the funds to Argentinian businesses. Of course, they never got that far because 24 hours after the launch of this coin, the president of Argentina was being called a scammer, and I got a message on my phone that I didn't expect. Hi, CoffeeZilla. I'd like to talk with you about the Milei launch. I was heavily responsible for it. The initials of the person were HD. I'm guessing Hayden Davis, but I couldn't be sure. So I asked for a selfie to confirm his identity, and I did cross-reference it with his photo with Milei, where Milei said he was a crypto advisor. It was indeed the same person who launched the coin. Hayden explained that he'd like to execute a plan and needed my help. He said Milei and his team basically botched it, and quote, I'd like to sit down and make sure all the money that they took out gets back into people's hands correctly. Every dollar. Let me know if you'd like to interview and discuss in person. Now, I was confused why he needed me in person exactly, and he explained, I'm happy to go live on an interview pending we chat beforehand. I'll even show you all the wallets pumped back into the chart live if you want. He had over $100 million in what he called multi-sigs, which require 2 or more people to sign on every transaction. I asked, well, who else is a signer? And he replied, quote, just me. He said, I want to do it alongside you. All I care about is knowing it's in safe hands. I don't mind turning the keys over or adding you to the multi-sigs. Translation, he wants to hand over his $100 million problem into my control. And I was thinking to myself, of course, hell no. You're not going to pass me your nightmare. Of course, I did say that we should talk because I had seen his recent public response and it didn't really go so well. In it, Hayden put forth his plan, where instead of trying to refund people with the $100 million he had a different idea.
What happened with Libra, I think there's many things I could say. There's only certain elements that I could control the launch. Definitely things didn't go according to plan, but I think addressing the elephant in the room, which is in the next 24, 48 hours, and unless somebody has a better idea, Any funds that I've been able to get back in my possession from all the parties involved, I intend to put right back into the chart and either burn or lock on the liquidity side.
Right. He wants to put the money back into Libra, but this kind of creates the same problems where it's like, okay, well, this just benefits insiders and people who have tons of the token. But after watching this, I was also concerned with a different problem. See, myself and the research firm Bubble Maps had been doing a lot of work tracking Melania Coin for a while. Yes, the US president's wife. She had launched a coin, and we were concerned that the same wallet which launched that seemed to have also launched Libra. Even worse, they had both been sniped by the same person who created the tokens, or the same network of wallets. Now, if you don't know what sniping is, it's where you buy a coin earlier than anyone else at cheaper prices. Usually, you know something in advance. And not only did these connected wallets buy Melania and Libra coins early, they also sold those coins early for millions in profits. So now, not only was I being offered control of $100+ million from the guy who launched Argentina's coin, apparently he also launched Melania Trump's coin, possibly sniped those coins, and also sold them for millions of dollars. But, you know, I realized it's not enough to just have blockchain evidence. There's only one way to really know for sure. I'd have to confront Hayden directly. But given his massive legal issues that may be on the horizon, I figured there's no way he would take a call with me, though. Right? But if you launch the coin, isn't it unfair for you to snipe the coin?
So I would say no. And I would say that for a couple different reasons.
Yep, I was wrong. He did agree to get on a call for an hour where he admitted to sniping Libra token and Melania token, later saying, though, it wasn't him directly, it may have been someone else on his team.
Most of the time when we're sniping, we're attempting to avoid other snipers getting in, right? So whether that's, and by the way, I don't conduct snipes.
However, I then got an interview with another insider in these coins who says that Hayden does snipe tokens personally. How does he know? Well, he claims he's seen it before. He was in the room with Hayden when it happened on another project called Enron Token, which you might not be surprised to realize I've also covered in another video. Just introduce yourself real quick for everyone who doesn't know you.
I'm the founder of DeFi Tuna. We're just providing leverage for liquidity providers. That's pretty much us. So I was part of the Enron project launch. I come in, there's this hookah bar where everyone's smoking hookah. And I see on the far end, there's a bodyguard and their whole family sitting down, Gideon, Hayden, across is Dr. Tom, daughters and then his sons. And they're all about to launch Enron. They have like 10 minutes before the launch, they all have snipers ready with a contract address on the snipers. Sniper bots. They're like all waiting. They're all, smoke coming out of their ears. They're all smoking like crazy on caffeine. The token launches and everyone's pressing. And the wonderful thing was this, I'm looking at it and they're like, oh, somebody got just before us. And, and everyone's just arguing between each other. But, they all still got earlier and they're still in a plus. And they're like, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, it's like a junkie house.
This interview was crazy. And remember, the guy we're talking about, this junkie house, is also the person who launched the president's wife's meme coin and then the Argentina's president's meme coin. It's insane. In the case of the Melania coin specifically, side note, the co-founder of our whistleblower actually says he was ordered to sell these coins, but do it in such a way where it's not illegal because no one will know.
And they were saying everything's legal, everything is good as long as nothing can be tracked. That was
yes.
He's one of the best liquidity providers that I know. I've seen or heard of. He understands at very deep level. He's done an excellent job. But one thing that they kept against him is the fact that he didn't sell on the top and he cost them millions of dollars. Up until even some recent discussions, like I have proof that they just keep bringing the subject up. Yeah, great, but he didn't sell. Melania cost us millions.
At the top. That's right. Supposedly, this guy got berated for, costing the millions of dollars by not selling at the tippity top. So, I did ask Hayden about profiting from Melania token, and here's where we had a bit of a confusion on what exactly we meant by Like, did you swap it? Did you sell it? I didn't swap it. I just sold it.
There was no money made from the Melania team on any. We didn't take any liquidity out. Zero.
You said y'all didn't sell any liquidity, but
didn't swap liquidity. Didn't swap liquidity. Didn't swap into single-sided. I didn't say there was no money sold. There's a difference between swapping the liquidity and selling liquidations. Those are two different things.
Okay, so y'all swapped. You didn't sell, or the other way around?
No, other way around. Other way around.
Sold, you didn't swap.
Yeah.
Well, there you have it. Two independent pieces of evidence from people who were on the inside of the Melania token, saying that Hayden and his team sniped tokens and wanted to dump for high profit secretly, while Hayden himself does admit that they, sold. They just didn't swap. Of course, I also obtained insider texts from Hayden Davis and his team on another project, this one called Mates, where an insider asks the following. Quote, you want continue pump or you want to distribute all Mates tokens ASAP, aka sell? Hayden replies, we are trying to max extract on this one. That max extraction supposedly led to 7,000 Solana, or roughly $1.3 million. And I do personally believe a lot of this is probably illegal. Whether it will be prosecuted, though, by our gutted regulators is another matter entirely. Right now, we seem to be in a race in America to deregulate cryptocurrency, meaning behavior like this is unlikely to ever be punished. For now, I just want to show people that these meme coins are deeply rigged financial vehicles for screwing regular people and transferring wealth to the top, to the insiders, and people like Hayden, they're everywhere in this industry. I should also mention, while I'm on the subject, by the way, that it's not only always the people themselves, it's also the platforms that sometimes are part of this. Platforms that launch meme coins obviously benefit from trading volume instead of price, meaning even if you lose, they make tons of money. And it's been a suspicion of a lot of people that some of them may play a role in some of these insider launches. Today, though, we got a little bit of evidence. In my investigations, one platform kept coming up, Meteora. They launched Trump Coin, Melania Coin, Libra, and many others on their platform. And they were crucial to giving Hayden Davis tons of business through his company, Kelsier. Meteora's CEO, Ben Chow, describes it as, I do know the Kelsier team well. Now, they were confronted about the fact that Kelsier and Hayden were sniping their own tokens, and Ben said, well, he had no idea. He's shocked by it. This clip is a little long, but it's worth it.
Kelsier is very much affiliated with M3 and with everything. It's very close. To be there and just see how. Sorry, but
actually no. Please tell me, because actually I don't know this.
Like I'm sitting down and I'm seeing, and everyone's got their phone. Everyone knows the contract address. Like Gideon, Hayden, Dr. Tom. Everyone's sitting at the table, and they're all with their phones. They all have snipe bots ready. They'll have all the CA.
They're all sniping it. It's them sniping.
But Ben, it's not only that. There is even. I'm 100% sure that it's also Jake involved. Everyone's involved. I'm sure the influencers involved. Look.
Me. Oh my God.
And like there are people that bypass them, like do it faster than them, and it's like, look, the whole thing just looks rotten to the very core.
Yeah, I really don't know if this guy is genuinely reacting or this is like some kind of Oscar award-winning performance. Like, what? No way. I had no idea. The people I've been handing business to have been sniping our own tokens. No idea. Meanwhile, I asked Hayden directly if Ben Chow would have known these snipes were happening. He responded, quote, I would say he wouldn't have been surprised, but he wouldn't have been involved. Now, that's interesting. True. And if it's true, it would mean that Ben's shocked reaction to this project sniping itself would be a little hard to believe. Meanwhile, by the way, Hayden Davis also doesn't really take credit for some of this. He implies that the Melania team itself was part of the reason they decided to snipe the coin. Were you part of the Melania launch, and was that sniped as well?
I mean, look, I think that, I told you like beforehand before this started, I mean, I'm happy to share the truth, but, I mean, you're asking a question that's, it's just, I mean, I'll answer, but it's factually going to put me into a lot of danger, which is fine. I'll answer. I was part of it. I think the team did want to snipe it because of how big the snipe was on Trump's.
So let me get this straight. Bin Chao has no idea. It wasn't Hayden's idea. Can the real sniper please stand up? All of these people just deny. Either way, though, Bin Chao agreed that the Libra situation in particular was so bad that he would have to step down from the company, regardless of whether he knew, because he called it SBF level, as in Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX.
This is like 202. This is FTX type of
Fucking hell, man. I feel sick. I feel so sick, man. Holy shit. I feel really sick. Oh my god.
This is like Doc One or what's his name type of money. I mean,
This is SBF level, man. I feel so sick. Because I gave him Melania. I didn't know he was a rugger. I feel so sick. I feel like I'm super exposed too. But I f***ed up because I enabled a guy who I should not have enabled. I'm gonna have to step down.
You know, I do have to agree with Bin Chao here. This is starting to make me feel sick too. Not because my platform enabled millions of dollars to be, quote, max extracted from retail, but because most people buying these coins have no idea how corrupt these launches are. With manipulative market making, sniping insiders selling, the deck is just totally stacked against you as a regular person. But don't take my word for it. Hayden, the guy we've been talking to, who literally runs these things, agrees.
It is an insider's game. This is an unregulated casino. Like, if you're a retail trader thinking you're gonna go make millions off of meme coins, you better study your off.
Well, honestly, I do appreciate his honesty. It's an insider's game, and as the saying goes, it's a big club, and you're not in it. Speaking of that, by the way, there was one person so far who has been refunded their losses in this whole debacle, Dave Portnoy. Dave was gonna do an insider deal with Libra token for free tokens where he tweeted about the coin. That deal was canceled though because Hayden told him basically not to tell anyone about the free coins, and Dave disagreed with that. But Dave did put 5 million of his own dollars in the coin in the hopes of obviously making money like everyone else. But when the coin crashed, he lost almost everything. Behind the scenes though, Dave got bailed out. Hayden Davis gave him his money back, which Dave has admitted publicly. So I guess, you know, for the big traders who are celebrities, they get their money back, roughly $5 million back, because I guess they're real victims. But refunding everyone who lost money, that's an insane idea.
Whether I refund people, they're still gonna be pissed, right? Refund people on a meme coin, which sounds insane. Or I inject back. People are gonna be mad either way.
Instead, the current plan is to once again dump the money back in the chart, which will disproportionately benefit insiders who know the timing. And what about Javier Milei? Can't forget about him. The president of Argentina is currently facing charges of fraud from the opposition party and threats of impeachment. Today, Milei finally addressed the Libra token and said the following.
Falso, yo difundí.
I broadcasted it, I didn't recommend it, I didn't promote it. The reality is if you go to the casino and lose money, what is the claim? It is about 5,000 people. And surely the chance that they are Argentinians is very remote.
Argentinos es muy remota.
Well, there you go. Pretty much your standard denial. I didn't do it, and if I did, they deserved it. And if they didn't deserve it, well, they weren't Argentinian anyways. One thing I will be clear about, though, is that all of the insiders I've spoken to so far claim that Milei himself made no money from this project. It was these other people who had access that were selling access to him. Whether you believe that is another matter entirely. But what is abundantly clear is that this was a massive failure for Argentina as a whole. It's an embarrassing situation where Milei allowed a 26-year-old to collect $100 million off his name, purporting to be for small businesses. And that same person sniped the coin as well, Melania's coin, Enron, and many others. Or his team did, or a team told him to. It's so far unclear, but the sniping itself is uncontested, as testified by Hayden Davis himself and an insider who was in the room. In the aftermath, there are possible impeachments, people possibly stepping down from their company, and millions of dollars in damages. And that is the story of the Argentinian Memecoin disaster.
Fascinating. What do you guys think about that one? What a tale. Well, after that story, let's do something a little different, and instead of money going out, we'll talk about money coming in from Andre.
So today I want to break down the $5,000 DOGE refund, which was just proposed by Elon Musk. In this video, I'll explain what the $5,000 DOGE dividend refund is, where it's coming from, and why it's getting so much attention. But in a nutshell, it's an idea that every American taxpayer could get a $5,000 check as a special refund funded by savings from cutting government waste. Now, it's being called the DOGE dividend because it's tied to something called the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE. This isn't actually handing out Dogecoin. The refund would be in dollars, but the hype actually started from a post on X saying that President Trump and Elon Musk should announce a DOGE dividend, a tax refund check sent to every taxpayer funded exclusively with a portion of the total savings delivered by DOGE. And just like that, it went viral. Everyone picked it up, from news outlets to crypto blogs to Fox. Millions of people are now debating whether a $5,000 payout funded by found money in Washington could really happen. Now, the DOGE team has reportedly already identified tens of billions of dollars of savings by cutting fraud, canceling unnecessary projects, and trimming agency budgets. So people are really excited that those savings might directly benefit American families as a one-time refund. But not everyone thinks this is actually a good idea, since giving $5,000 to each American could also cause some major problems. Either way, I want to help explain exactly how this is going to work if it happens, how much it would cost, what the odds of this would be, and how this would affect the economy. So with that said, let's get into it. Hi, my name is Andre Jick. Hope you're doing well. Come for the finance and stay for the DOGE.
Thanks,
so the
buddy.
first question is, what are the chances that this realistically could happen and everyone could get a $5,000 refund? So at this point in time, I think it's really important to remember that this is just a proposal. It's an idea, not an actual approved policy. But since Elon Musk and President Donald Trump have now become bros, it could actually happen. Now, as of right now, there's no official government announcement of any stimulus or DOGE dividend checks going out, and the White House has said that Elon Musk, while an advisor, is not in charge of DOGE, and nor has he ever been in charge of issuing any tax refunds. In other words, Elon can suggest policy changes, but he can't all by himself just decide to cut $5,000 checks to everyone. That would require presidential approval and probably an act of Congress to distribute this money. But the idea is actually coming to us at a really politically interesting time. President Trump and Elon Musk have teamed up on government efficiency, which Republicans and Democrats generally support because it targets wasteful spending. Handing some of that money back to taxpayers actually makes a lot of sense. In fact, you might have even seen people making videos about them being angry at the government for wasting our tax dollars. But there's also a lot of roadblocks. A lot of economists oppose any new stimulus-style payments because inflation is finally cooling down from the pandemic, and more government spending could bring that back. Anytime we talk about the government injecting cash into the economy, especially on the scale of tens or hundreds of billions of dollars, we have to consider inflation. After the 2020 and 2021 stimulus checks and other spending, the US experienced the highest inflation in 40 years. And studies have tried to show how much of that was due to the stimulus, but one MIT analysis attributed about 42% of that early 2022 inflation spike to the massive federal spending. It's no surprise that as soon as the $5,000 refund idea became so popular, people started asking, wouldn't this just bring back inflation? The answer is yes, it probably would. If every household suddenly got an extra $5,000 to spend, that's a huge boost in purchasing power across the country. So unless the economy can instantly produce more stuff or goods and services to meet that extra demand, prices would probably go up. But hold on a minute. This would actually not be funded from new government spending. It would be funded from old government wasted spending. So maybe it is possible and it won't cause as much inflation as people think. And if it's possible, we have to ask how much it's going to cost to send each taxpayer $5,000. But here's what we know so far. As of now, DOGE claims to have saved about $50 to $55 billion in just a month or so of work. And Elon and the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent have said that they expect to save a lot more as they continue, and Elon even mentioned a long-term goal of up to $2 trillion in cuts over time. That is a huge amount of money. But is that enough? Here's how the math of the DOGE dividend would actually work. The original plan suggests taking 20% of the total savings that DOGE finds and then redistributing it to taxpayers as checks, while using the rest of the 80% to help pay down the national debt. Now, if DOGE eventually saves its $2 trillion goal, then 20% of that would be $400 billion, and that would be available for refunds. If that is spread across roughly 78 to 79 million tax-paying households in the US, then you'd get about $5,000 per household. The math checks out on that, but that's household, and the plan calls for each American to get $5,000. Now, if we assume that America has 341 million citizens, which is the latest reporting from the Census Bureau, and we multiply that number by $5,000, that's about $1.7 trillion. That would almost be the entire savings goal of DOGE in the 4 years of Mr. Trump's presidency. But okay, maybe it's not every citizen. Maybe it's every tax-paying citizen. And that is closer to 155 million people, multiplied by 5,000, is still $775 billion, which is actually very possible, but most likely in a few years' time once they cut enough wasteful spending. Also, it goes without saying that this would be a one-time tax refund or stimulus check and not a recurring payment. And since it's framed as giving people their money back, it's pitched as a financially responsible dividend of government efficiency rather than extra government spending. But still, is that a good idea, or could it cause inflation? If the government were to try this right now, before the savings are fully realized, it would have to find other ways to get the money. And some possibilities that people talked about are reshuffling existing budgets, using unused funds, issuing new debt, or finding other revenue sources. And in that case, inflation would become a major problem. So all of these options come with trade-offs, which would most likely spike inflation and make the price of everything more expensive. And as we've learned with the pandemic, companies love to raise their prices and then blame supply chains or increased demand, but because prices are sticky, they don't come down once they are raised. So none of this is as straightforward as just cutting waste and redistributing the savings. For now, the odds of this actually happening are very small, but it's a really interesting idea. It's just that when it's broken down, hopefully people can understand the practical challenges. Having said that though, I would love to get the taxes that I paid to the government that it wasted to be paid back to me.
$10 million for Mozambique voluntary medical male circumcisions.
As always, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Smash the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. I'd love to see you back here next week. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Well, what are your thoughts on that one? $5,000 to every taxpayer. That could be pretty wild. What would you do with it?
Well, thank you, Andre, for your insight on that. Let's see what Graham's got to say.
Under consideration, a new concept where we give 20% of the DOGE savings to American citizens and 20% goes to paying down debt, because the numbers are incredible.
And his goal is very simple: to abolish the Internal Revenue Service and let all the outsiders pay.
What's up, you guys? It's Graham here. And how would you like to receive a few $1,000s for doing absolutely nothing? That's right. Even though you probably thought that stimulus checks were a thing of the past, think again. In a remarkable turn of events, the Department of Government Efficiency proposed that a portion of their savings should be given back to US citizens as a dividend. And now Donald Trump seems to agree, basically implying that instead of you paying the government is going to pay you, especially since the savings currently stands at $55 billion and growing. That's why we really have to talk about exactly what this means, what you could expect, how much you might realistically receive, and the details that almost everybody misses. Because unlike the previous stimulus checks of 2020, there is some fine print that could either be really good or really bad for you, depending on how much money you make, or I guess don't make. So you're gonna wanna hear this. Although before we start, as usual, if you appreciate the breaking news videos where I basically cancel everything I'm doing to try to get this out on time, it would mean the world to me if you hit the like button or subscribed if you haven't done that already. And as a thank you for doing that, here's a picture of a Shiba Inu. So thanks so much, and also a big thank you to Surfshark VPN for sponsoring this video, but more on that later. All right, so in terms of where to begin, let's talk about Doge, except not the coin, the Department of Government Efficiency. Now, even though this isn't an official government agency, they are allowed to operate through an executive order, acting almost like an advisory to help the government identify inefficiencies and what they see as wasteful spending. So far, this has included a $6.5 billion cut from US aid, $500 million from the Department of Education, $230 million from the Social Security Administration, $190 million from the General Services Administration, $170 million from the Agriculture Department, $152 million from the Department of Health and Human Services, $130 million from the Transportation Department, and $119 million from the Commerce Department. It's also estimated that 6,700 IRS workers will be terminated who are not deemed critical to filing season, a push to return government workers to the office, and a federal buyout for those who wish to voluntarily resign. But what's even more shocking is that after seeing all of this, one user on X suggested that a portion of these funds be returned to taxpayers in the form of a dividend. Elon responded, Trump agreed, and here we are. Crazy, right? So how much of this could go back to you? Well, first of all, I see this mistake being made all the time. You can't just take the total sum of all savings, divide that by the entire population of the United States, and expect to get an accurate answer. After all, that number encompasses children, non-taxpayers, non-citizens, and 185-year-olds still collecting Social Security. That was a joke. So if we want to calculate the number of people who paid taxes in any given year, according to the Tax Foundation, 77 million people, or the top 50%, paid 97.7% of all income tax in the United States. And if we round up to the people who paid some amount of income tax in the prior year, I think it's pretty safe to say that roughly 85 million people would theoretically get to benefit from a tax refund. From there, we then have to calculate what percentage of those savings could then be given back to each person. And according to Trump, this could amount to 20%, meaning if Doge cuts $55 billion worth of spending, 20% of that is $11 billion. Spread that amongst 85 million people, and each person would receive, wait for it, $129, with the rest being applied towards other initiatives and paying down the government debt. Of course, keep in mind that Doge has only been operating for a month, and if these savings continue at the same trajectory, over the course of a year, each person could see a $1,550 refund. So all of a sudden, those begin to add up. For example, in the beginning, Doge aimed to cut $2 trillion worth of unnecessary expenditures. And if that were to happen, unlikely as it is, take 20% of that, spread it amongst 85 million people, and that is where you get the $5,000 headline that you've probably seen on the news. However, do keep in mind that that $2 trillion figure was later backtracked by Elon Musk, who called it the best case scenario, especially considering that the discretionary budget only went as high as $1.7 trillion, and just recently Elon Musk tweeted that I never mentioned a specific dollar figure, just said that I would see if the president wanted to consider a tax reduction linked to Doge savings. The amount would therefore obviously be proportional to how much savings Doge actually achieves. The top Doge priority remains, however, reducing the deficit to stop inflation and lowering people's interest rates. Although despite some of these numbers coming in much lower than expected, according to the proposal, the goal is to right the wrong done to the taxpayer, share the benefits of cost cutting, boost morale to increase US tax receipts, and incentivize the labor force participation in 2025. On top of that, unlike the COVID-era stimulus checks, which were given out by individual with an income below a certain threshold and then phased out, it's not out of the ordinary to think that the same would apply here, except the exact opposite, as in the more money you make and paid in taxes, the more money you would get back. After all, if someone paid $100,000 to the IRS, they should, in theory, be entitled to a greater percentage of the refund than the person who only paid $100, since that person contributed more. However, in terms of the likelihood of this passing, as well as the impact this is probably going to have on the economy, inflation, and its effectiveness of actually making a difference, you're going to want to hear this because there's a lot of misinformation floating around on the internet that you're going to want to be made aware of. Although before we go into that, just like it's important to be careful and aware of how your tax dollars are spent, it's equally as important to be protective of the data that you share online. Okay, thank you so much, and now let's get back to the video. Alright, now in terms of the impact another stimulus or refund could have on our economy, inflation, and your wallet, we need to talk about the ones who are tasked to control it, the Federal Reserve. In terms of upcoming interest rates, they have just gone on record to say that current policy is significantly less restrictive than it had been before the rate cuts, meaning we're unlikely to see them cut interest rates even further anytime soon, given the high probability of prices, believe it or not, going higher. In fact, according to their statement, it was indicated that firms would attempt to pass on to consumers higher input costs arising from potential tariffs. Or in other words, if companies end up paying more, then you end up paying more. All of this points to a very strong chance that we're probably not going to see any rate cuts anytime soon. The economy is going to remain strong because of tax cuts and deregulation, which is going to keep prices elevated, and they're going to take a wait-and-see approach for inflation to eventually return back to their 2% target, which could be a while. Separate from that, there's also the concern that another government payout is going to contribute to inflation and make it worse. And the answer to that is somewhat mixed. See, previous research suggested that 42% of the COVID-era inflation was the result of stimulus checks, which is certainly a lot, but since inflation is primarily caused by spending and not saving, one analysis made the argument that any inflation we see from this would be mild at most, because the households receiving a refund would be more likely to stash it away or invest instead of spending it. Therefore, it wouldn't contribute as much to consumption. On top of that, this check wouldn't be printing more money out of thin air. It would simply be returning what people had already paid. But in terms of what I think about this, realistically, if people get a $100 to $1,000 check out of nowhere, most likely it's going to be spent. That's just the way it is. I mean, keep in mind, as of now, the personal savings rate is at an all-time low. Household debt is at an all-time high. And if I were to bet, if $11 billion suddenly enters the economy again, there would most likely be a small uptick in inflation, albeit probably a lot smaller than what we saw back in 2022. Of course, you could also make the argument that tax cuts are inflationary, or really anything that gives people more money back in their pockets is likely to cause prices to rise at least a little bit. But all of that is to say that realistically, we're not going to get rate cuts anytime soon. There's likely going to be a long road ahead of us, especially if tariffs end up being passed back to the consumer, and we're likely going to have to patiently wait for inflation to return back to 2% before we see any movements on interest rates. That is, of course, unless we see a recession or any black swan event that we just can't see coming. Although, in terms of your chances of getting a refund check and my thoughts about everything that's just happened, here's what you need to know. Overall, I think you could tell I'm a fan of reducing government spending, waste, unnecessary expenditures, whatever you want to call it. I think it's long overdue. I mean, there should be no reality in which the Pentagon fails its 7th audit in a row, politicians are caught taking bribes, and hundreds of billions of dollars goes missing. It just seems common sense that all government spending should be public and traceable down to the penny. Or I guess in this case now, down to the nickel. I just think there's no accountability and no incentive for the government to spend any less money because they become so accustomed to just pressing a button and printing more money that it doesn't matter. And the go-to solution has just been borrow more money, tax the rich, and blame the other side for your problems. And this applies, by the way, to both Democrats and Republicans. Neither side is perfect. This has been going on for decades. So from that perspective, yes, I am all for it, and I think there's a lot to cut down on. But it's yet to be seen how much of a difference this will actually make, how much can realistically be saved, and whether or not it's dangerous to take a cut first, find out later approach. Like, admittedly, I have concerns about cutting services or departments which could be of service, but won't be found out until much later, until maybe some damage is done. Now, the flip side to this is that slowly cutting spending and then evaluating its effectiveness could take years or even decades. So I see why they're taking a cut very fast approach here. But, like I said, I don't doubt that there are some uncertainties here that we're not going to know until much, much later. Like, remember that article about 150-year-olds collecting Social Security? Well, as it turns out, one of Trump's appointed commissioners clarified that these were simply people on record who didn't have a certificate of death, not that they were actually receiving benefits. And apparently, the Social Security Administration stops payments to people who are older than 115 years old, which has been in effect since 2015. I say this just to temper some of the expectations of massive savings up front, and some of the headline numbers you'll end up seeing are pretty ambitious. Not to mention, if you actually want to make a sizable difference to the government deficit up front in a way that's not controversial, two economists propose that you could simply allow agencies to roll over unused funds into the next fiscal year and don't let Congress use the funds as a gauge by which they reduce future budgets. I know, right? It just seems, again, it's common sense. I don't see how anyone could disagree with this. Prove me wrong. Secondly, as far as your likelihood of getting a refund, I actually think it's a pretty good chance over the next year or two, but I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. After all, any savings would have to be audited, locked in, and guaranteed long-term before you get any money back. Personally, I think you're way more likely just to get a federal tax credit towards money paid in future years than you are to get a check or Visa gift card applied today. That would just be way too difficult to implement. But all of this, at this point, is just speculation. Let me know what you guys think of this down below in the comment section. As always, I do my best to read and respond to as many of them as I can. Thank you so much again to Surfshark VPN for sponsoring this video, and until next time.
So there we go for this week. What are your thoughts on this whole 5K situation? Could be pretty wild. Let me know below. Like and subscribe, please. Just getting started here, so I very much appreciate it. Thank you. See you next week.